Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Another snowy Sunday. This is becoming a pattern, right? But we're so glad to see you all here today. About 7 months ago, we started a bold campaign called Make Space. And this is not simply a building project or a capital campaign, but we started asking, what does it look like for us as a church? That includes both you and me as individual members of the church, but also us together. What does it look like for us to make space so that more people can build community and can encounter Jesus? And God has been so faithful in the last 7 months, and we want to be faithful to say, God, whoever you want to reach, whoever you want to bring to our church, we have space for them. And today, because we believe that God has a purpose for this church and this community, and because I believe that God has a purpose for you in this church, we are going to look back, we're going to do a check-in and say, where are we 7 months later? We are going to celebrate some incredible things that God has been doing. And then we're going to challenge ourselves for what is next. But I first want to say this, if you are new here today and you're a visitor, I want you to hear this before we even start this message. We are not asking anything of you today. We are thrilled that you are here. And what you'll get today is a behind-the-scenes look of what God is doing in and through this church family. And you'll get a bit of a behind-the-scenes look of this vision and mission that God is rallying His church around. But today, on our 7-month or so anniversary of our Make Space campaign, our topic for today is God's mission, our participation. God's mission, our participation. And today we're going to read from the book of Nehemiah. God laid this on my heart a couple of months ago, and if you saw on social media a little bit of a testimony that Anna did, today the content that our kids are doing down in Kids Church is also from Nehemiah. That wasn't planned. It is just how God lines things up when I believe He has a message for His church. But Nehemiah is an incredibly powerful book that I can do a whole series on or preach about for at least 4 hours. So to not do that, I'm going to only read through a couple of sections in the book of Nehemiah today, and I want to encourage you to go home and to go and read the whole book. It is such a beautiful book, but here's a bit of context. Israel was this one kingdom under King Saul, under King David, and then King Solomon. After King Solomon, Israel splits into 2 kingdoms, the northern kingdom, the southern kingdom. And in 722 before Christ, the northern kingdom is conquered by the Assyrians. Then, years later, in 586 before Christ, the southern kingdom, with Jerusalem as its center, is conquered by the Babylonians. And all of these people, or many of them, are carried into exile, where they now live in other countries, in other cities, where other gods are worshipped, while Jerusalem and everything lies in ruins. A while into that journey, the Persians conquer the Babylonians. And under Cyrus, the Persian king, he allows some of these Judeans, the Israelites, to go back to their home country. And for 100 years, many of them are back in Jerusalem. But the city walls are still ruined. It's still a pile of stones and bricks, and nothing is going on. And then God uses one man who got a burden for something to bring about change. And his name was Nehemiah. And we're going to read today about him. He was not in Jerusalem. He's thousands of miles removed from Jerusalem in the Persian kingdom, working for the king. And this is what we read from Nehemiah 1, verse 1 to 6. The word of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah, in the month of Kislev in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa, Hanani, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some other men, and I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile and also about Jerusalem. They said to me, those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire. When I heard these things, I sat down and I wept. For days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. Now, you can go and read after this his whole prayer and how he goes to the king. But what is so beautiful to me, Nehemiah is working for the king in the palace. He's comfortable, he's safe, his life is good. And then he gets bad news about God's people, about the city of God, Jerusalem, about the temple of God. And Nehemiah could have said, you know what, I am comfortable. I'm so far removed from this problem. This is someone else's problem. It's not mine. But yet when he hears what happened, we read that when he heard that the walls are broken down, that the community is broken, that people are living in disgrace, he sat down and he wept. And for days he fasted and he prayed. And it is so easy to read over that verse and just be like, okay, he wept and he prayed. But what is beautiful to me, in this moment, when Nehemiah got that news about people thousands of kilometers removed from him, he could have said, you know what? I feel for the pain. I will say a quick prayer for them. I will post on Facebook. Let's pray for Jerusalem. And then it's someone else's problem, not mine. But what we see in Nehemiah's life is that when he saw a challenge, when he heard about this problem, that he felt burdened by it. And because he was burdened by the crisis that Jerusalem was in, it moved his heart to action. And I truly believe, that there is something going on in our community as well, that God wants to rebuild, and he starts by breaking someone's heart for the problem in a community, in a city, in a country before he starts to rebuild. Just as he broke Nehemiah's heart before the rebuilding of the wall of Jerusalem, so I believe God wants to rebuild something in our community, and he's going to break our hearts for that first. So if you feel a burden, if you look around you at the world and you feel a burden for our world and you are worried about where our world is going and you're worried about what you're seeing, I want to tell you today that it is because God is trusting you with a piece of his heart. A deep burden is God's invitation to join his mission. It's not just a burden. It's not just something we feel and that we can shrug off. It is an invitation to join him in his mission. And we have a Jerusalem. We have a Jerusalem right here in our community that I believe we should feel burdened for. And I shared some of this months ago when we launched the Make Space campaign. But if you look 20 minutes, go 20 minutes in every direction from this church, we know that there's at least 160,000 people who do not have a personal relationship with Jesus, at bare minimum. 160,000 people. The number of people who's choosing no God, who says, I don't believe in any God, has doubled in Canada over the last 20 years. And I go back and I think back about this church that's almost been in this community for 100 years. And I'm thankful that in 1931, Reverend John MacLeod, who was sent by the People's Church in Toronto, had a burden for Newmarket. Had a burden that he felt that moved him to action, and he literally stood on the corner of Main Street and Timothy Street and preached the gospel to people, and that was the birth of our church in 1932. But the shocking thing to me is if you look at the census data from 1931, almost all Canadians said that they are religious or that they believe in God. They were either Roman Catholic or from various Protestant groups, but people who said we have no religion or that were part of some small sects were a significantly small fraction of the community. Even if you go back 50 years to 1971, almost 90% of people still said that they are religious. And I wonder, back then in 1931, when God gave someone a burden, to preach the gospel in Newmarket that led to the establishment of this church. I wonder if back then God not only ensured that Newmarket had a church that would serve its growing population back then 100 years ago, but I wonder if back then God ensured that a church would be planted that almost 100 years later would do everything it can to reverse the decline of Christianity in our community. God had a purpose and God had a plan with this church so that people around us might know Him. Today, people are still spiritually exiled. They are far from God. But not just that, when we read the Bible, Jesus tells us that our two biggest purposes in life is to love God and to love our neighbors as ourselves. And it's not just that people are spiritually empty and hungry, but we see that people are not connected to their neighbors, that people are lonelier than ever. 24% of people in Ontario says that they feel lonely regularly. And honestly, I don't believe it's just 24%. I think that number is way higher. People are trying to navigate life alone, and it is not healthy, and it's not going well. When Nehemiah got the news about Jerusalem that was in ruins, about people that were scattered, people that were hurting, he had this moment while he felt this burden for it, where he realized if he doesn't do something about it, he's sitting in the Persian palace. If he doesn't do something about the crisis in Jerusalem, who will? And if we don't create space for our family, for our friends, for our neighbors, for our co-workers to meet Jesus, the question is, who will? We cannot just shrug this off and say it's someone else's problem. We are in this town and in these communities for a reason. And no one but the church got the commission from God to share the love of Jesus and to connect people to each other. No one else. That is the church's mission given to us by God. So if we don't feel that burden, who will? And that is why Make Space matters. This is why our awareness of the problems around us should become a burden deep inside of us that moves us to action. Our leadership team has been carrying this burden for a while. And the same as Nehemiah, we brought it before God for years. And it really started back in end of 2021, where we said, where is God taking this church? And we adopted a new vision, and we decided back then to move into action. And when we talk about making space for our family and our friends and our neighbors and our community, that is not something that we hope or dream about will happen somewhere in the future. Something that has already been happening. We have already been making space by serving our community, by loving our neighbors, by inviting them to our tables, by including them in our circles, by serving them. We've been making space for our friends and our families and our neighbors, and God has been faithful. And before we look at what's ahead, I want to share with you today how He has already been faithful to fill the space that we've been creating. If you were here in March when we launched this campaign, you probably got a little magazine like this. And what I love about what God is doing in our church is this is such a beautiful work of art that Anna, our media director, created for us. But it's already outdated. Because we look back at the 3 years, 2022 to 2024, and when we looked at what God was doing, we saw this increase where in that 3 years we had 725 new people, not just attending our service. There's many more who attended, but 725 people who walked through our doors, who filled in a connection card, who said, I want to be connected to this church. That was in those 3 years. This year alone, and we're not done with the year yet, we've had 351 people say, I want to connect with this church. It's almost half of what we had in the previous 3 years. Our attendance grew. In this magazine, it looked at what we were at the end of 2024. We were 300 people at the end of 2024. Our attendance has already climbed to an average of 350, so a 17% increase, and the year is not done yet. Our kids, man, I found some of our meeting notes the other day of when I just arrived here during COVID. And then by 2022, government said we can open the church doors again and we can meet as normal. And I read through some of our meeting minutes where we look back at what happened on Sundays. And we were between 10 and 18 children in our kids' ministry back in 2022. When we gave out this magazine, we were at 55 average attendance in kids' ministry at the end of 2024. We are already now at 75 kids on a Sunday on average, and the year is not done yet. We've witnessed 27 baptisms from 2022 to 2024. And everyone was like, who's been part of this church for a long time, has been like, we haven't seen this amount of baptisms in years. This year alone, we baptized 21 people who've encountered Jesus. When we launched this, we talked about Alpha, that we want to start to help people understand who Jesus is and understand the Bible and see that He's worth following. We're 2 semesters in and we've had 26 people going through that already. So this is not something we're dreaming about. God is already moving. God is already filling the spaces that we are creating, both in our hearts and in this building. And all of these numbers, when we listen to it, these aren't just numbers. Every single one of those numbers represents a name. And every single name has a story, and every story matters to God. That's what these numbers represent. And you and I are part of the stories that God are rewriting through our prayer and through our serving and through opening our lives and through our giving and inviting in everything we do. And I want you today to hear from people their own stories of what has been happening in the last couple of months in their lives. So we're going to watch a short video, and you guys can play that. Thanks.
So we've been attending Grace Church for over a year now. Our son Luke loves learning about Jesus at kids' church, and he's always singing the songs in the car on the way home and reciting the verses that they learn. One day we had a play date with one of his friends of the Muslim faith, and while I was talking to his friend's mom, I can hear Luke in the corner telling his friend, "Okay, repeat after me. In this world you will have trouble, but be encouraged. I have won the battle over the world." John 16:33. His friend had repeated the memory verse after him. A few weeks later, I got a message from his friend's mom saying that her son was curious about coming to church because Luke kept talking about how much he loved Sunday school at Grace Church. I really believe that this is exactly why we need to invest in making space for our kids at church, so we can have room for kids like Luke's friend who are one invitation away from learning more about Jesus.
Making space is more than what you'll see today. It's about the next generation. We have teens who are inviting new friends every week. They not only want to come to youth, but serve their own generation. One of the teens wants to start a youth band for every Friday worship. Another expressed how much they love serving. Before they felt like they were just floating around, but now they have a role to play. Our youth are growing and becoming more aware of their strengths and weaknesses. They're growing in love, in their faith, and in community.
My name is Shar, and I started attending the Alpha program at Grace Church beginning of October. And then I started coming to church on Sundays for about just over a month. And I'm honestly, it's in my calendar as an occurring event. I'm just so excited. I love it. I had started in Alpha a few years ago when it got canceled because of COVID. So I was like, oh, but I really like it. And then it just sort of like went out of my mind. And then I saw it again. I'm like, I got to do it again because I need to know how it ends. And signed up. I just have so many questions. So I'm always like, oh, I'm scared I'm going to ask a stupid question. But everyone's like, there's no stupid questions. And they give me answers and puts my mind at ease. And if I'm confused about certain things from like Old Testament, New Testament, they're helpful in explaining a lot of stuff for me.
Just a couple of stories of what this initiative is about. It is about us creating space, first of all, in our heart, but then also in our building for people like the ones you saw on the video right now. This is not about building rooms. It's about creating room in which relationships can deepen. It's not about building facilities. We are creating environments in which faith can grow. We're not just upgrading square footage in our building. We are building spaces where life change can occur. And that is why we are busy to create new kids and youth spaces where our children and our youth can develop a passionate faith in Jesus that lasts a lifetime. That's why we're creating multi-use rooms in which community can grow and where people can encounter Jesus like in Alpha. That is why we're creating new office spaces so that leadership can multiply. We are adding accessible upgrades so that no one, no matter who they might be, are left on the outside because they physically cannot access our building. We have to carry the burden first. But then we need to move to action. And we see this in Nehemiah's story where he heard about what was going on. He felt the burden, but then he moves into action. He goes and he speaks to the king. He's just a humble guy. Like, why would the king even listen to him? Why would the king allow him to leave his service and go back to Jerusalem? But Nehemiah goes and he asks the king. And the king grants him the request. And he goes and he travels all around Jerusalem and sees the condition of the walls. And he makes plans and he rallies people. And he has to deal with the enemy that constantly wants to stop them and change things. And then finally, he gets everyone on board and the change starts to happen. And I want to skip to Nehemiah 3, where they are busy with the building process. In Nehemiah 3, verse 1, Eliashib the high priest and his fellow priests went to work and rebuilt the sheep gate. They dedicated it and set its doors in place, building as far as the Tower of the 100, which they dedicated, and as far as the Tower of Hananel. The men of Jericho built the adjoining sections, and Zachar, son of Imri, built next to him. The fish gate was rebuilt by the sons of Hassenaah. They laid its beams and put its doors and bolts and bars in place. Meremoth, son of Uriah, the son of Hakaz, repaired the next section. Next to him, Meshullam, son of Berechiah, the son of Meshezabel, made repairs. And next to him, Zadok, son of Baana, also made repairs. The next section was repaired by the men of Tekoa. But their nobles would not put the shoulder to the work under their supervisors. What we read about in Nehemiah, all of these names, and this is just a short part of all of the names that's listed. But what we see is that every single person had a role to play. We read that everyone built a section of the wall in front of their house. And this wasn't necessarily equal work. Some houses might have been bigger and some smaller, and people had different skills. Like you read about all of these different craftspeople who were all involved in it. But what we see is that it was equal sacrifice where every single person took responsibility for this vision and every single person rebuilt a part of the wall. Except, we read, for a few nobles who did not put their shoulder to the work. Now, I need 7 people to quickly help me with an illustration. 7 people to join me here. Come, raise your hand. 7 people. Let's go. Let's go. I've got 1, 2. I need 5 more. If you can't count, they're in the back. Come. There's another one. So we've got 4, 5, 6, 7. 3 more. 3 more. Why are you all so shy? I'm standing here every single Sunday. And you all stare at me. Okay, another one, another one. 1 more. And another one. Good. Okay. Building a wall today. Okay, who needs one? This. a wall here that we're building, but the wall is not complete. There are 2 gaps in this wall. And this is what we read initially when some nobles didn't want to do the work that they were called to do. Everyone built just a section in front of their house. But the problem is, no matter how high this wall is, no matter how strong the wall is, no matter how beautiful the wall is, if there are sections that are not completed, the wall is vulnerable, and the city is vulnerable, and the people who for 100 years couldn't go back to their city because the walls are broken down, still wouldn't be able to move in. Because there are gaps in the wall and it is not safe. We are building something that we cannot build on our own. We are building something that will take, God has given us a vision that will take every single person that calls Grace Church home. This is not just about leaders building their sections or about the elders building their sections or the staff or people who's already on board. This calls for all of the 700 plus people that call Grace Church home to say, we've got a portion in front of our house that we need to build. We have a role to play in this. And God gave us, I believe, a vision, and He has placed everything that's needed to complete this vision in our church already. We read this in Nehemiah. Everything they needed, God provided. But we also read this in the New Testament, that the way that God puts His body together is that every single one of us have a role to play to complete the picture of His church, the body. So God put everything we need to fulfill this mission right here in our church, and you and I are part of it. And if this is your church, then this is your mission and your vision as well. If this is your church, then you have the role to open your heart, to make space for people. Then you need to make space to share Jesus with your colleagues and your neighbors and your friends. Then you are called to create space at your table and invite people in. You are called to invite them to church. You are called to serve. You are called to give. You are called to go with us, to build with us on this mission. And by the way, today at our AGM, we are sharing where we believe God is taking us as we approach our 100th anniversary. But I need 2 more people to come and help me. 2 more. 1, 2. There was nobles who didn't want to build, but finally, everyone jumped in. Everyone started building their section of the wall. And when everyone built their section, what was seemingly impossible suddenly became possible. A wall that for 100 years couldn't be repaired was suddenly repaired. But it required everyone to jump in. And finally, the wall was complete and people could move in. Thank you for my team of 9 volunteers. You can just put it against the wall there. I want to say this. As we are actively going after 1% of our community, as we are actively making space for people to build community and to encounter Jesus, there's 2 things that Nehemiah experienced that you and I should expect. And the first one, I thought, maybe I shouldn't say this. And I'm like, no, I think I should say it. The first thing you can expect is that you will experience opposition. People have already told me, like, we came to Grace, we gave our life to Jesus, and a lot of stuff is going well, but a lot of stuff seems to be going wrong. The moment they started building, the enemy was at their doorstep. The enemy was telling them, oh, this wall, a jackal will jump up to it and will fall over. Later, when they saw, oh, this wall is actually taking shape, they threatened to attack them. And we read that the guys had to build with one hand and stand with a sword in the other. As a church, we have a real enemy that does not want the church of Jesus to do what it has been called to do, to make disciples. And if we are moving ahead with this mission, we are not staying in the back rows. And we hope that somehow something would happen. We are actively moving to the front lines and saying, we're going to fight on the front line in the spiritual battle because we're going to help people encounter Jesus. But the most bullet flies over the front line, not the back lines. So we can experience and we can expect spiritual opposition. But the second thing that we can expect is God to do the impossible. And when you read the story of Nehemiah, there are all of these ridiculously impossible things that just became possible. You start reading of this man who's like a entry-level worker. He's not like some of the great names in the Bible. He's not Queen Esther or one of those who had a really high position in the palace. He's just a simple servant. But he goes to the king and he asks the king to send him back to Jerusalem. And not only does the king send him back, the king grants all these requests. We read in Nehemiah 2, verse 8 to 9. Because the gracious hand of God was on me, the king granted my request. So I went to the governors of Trans-Euphrates and gave them the king's letters. You know what the king's letters was for? Give them wood, give them material to rebuild the wall. A wall that could possibly one day stand in opposition to me, that I have to attack again. But you know what? I'm just going to tell all of my people to supply Jerusalem with what they need to rebuild their military wall. And not only that, but we read the king had also sent army officers and cavalry with me. He's like, I'm just going to give you some soldiers as well to protect you on this journey. More than that, God sees his mission through to the end. And as I said, for 100 years, people were living there and the walls are still in ruin. Nehemiah comes, he's got a burden, he's got a vision, he goes into action. And we read in Nehemiah 6, verse 15, after everyone jumped in, the wall was completed on the 25th of Elul in 52 days. What couldn't be fixed in 100 years when God got involved was fixed in 52 days. God doesn't call us to what we can do alone. That is a human-sized mission and vision. That is what every company and every place in the world is doing. God calls us to something that we can only do through him because he wants the glory. So God doesn't call me and you to what we can do alone, but to what only he can do through us. But the question is, can God still do today what he did in the time of Nehemiah? And God used the Persian king who didn't follow him, who wasn't a believer, to supply the needs of the people so that Jerusalem could be rebuilt. I want to start there. Can God still do it? This building is 50 years old this year. And we know that before we can even start the renovations of our lower level, we had an issue because our basement was taking on water and has been for years. So we started looking at digging up the foundations and adding new weepers. We had guys who came in with cameras and couldn't find where our weepers are going. They thought the clock, and then we found out, half of our basement didn't have weepers. We had to seal the basement. So we are going through this process and trying to figure out how are we going to make this a possibility. And a couple of years ago, people showed up here one day to test where our stormwater is going from the building. So I was just like, it's probably city people, and they're testing this water. And finally they come back and they start talking to our church. And one day, the one man who used to be a pastor and is now working as a project manager, he says, listen, developers want to get water out of the stormwater system. I'm going to propose this as a project for them and see what they say. So he proposes this project to seal our basement and add weepers and put new eavesdrops on and get our water into the right places. And the developers say, houses are they're not selling. We don't want to do it. So he's like, I'm going back because this is a unique opportunity. And he goes back to them and they say, okay, we'll do the project. And maybe you saw that over the last 2 weeks, there's been digging all around our church. New weepers have been added. The whole basement has been sealed. New eavesdrops. If you were here 2 weeks ago, water was pouring out everywhere except for where they're supposed to go out. New eavesdrops on our entire building. And we met with the project manager, Wen and I, last week. And we asked him, listen, we didn't pay for this. Like, developers are paying for this. We haven't paid a cent. And we're like, what is this project cost? Where are we? And it's like, well, what has been done, and they're not done yet, is like we're about $250,000 in. $250,000 that we didn't raise, that we didn't provide, that God just said, I will use people who's not even necessarily part of your church to pay for the work of rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. So if you're like, does God still do it? He did it in the time of Nehemiah, and God is still doing it today. But more than that, I want to talk about what God has done financially so far in our church. 3 years ago, this church had a deficit of about $100,000 on a budget, and an income of about $400,000. That was it. 3 years ago. To this date, in the last 7 months, 90 families in this church have pledged more than $1 million to our Make Space campaign. And now that doesn't include our operating budget. That's above and beyond what we need to operate. Guys, that is a miracle by itself. I don't see how a church goes in 3 years from where we were to where we are now. And that is something that I celebrate. That is God still moving, still turning the impossible into the possible. But we still have some gaps in our wall. And to finish our project that we hope will happen next summer, we still need to raise about $600,000. And as we talk about these numbers, I want you to hear what I said earlier. This isn't just a number goal, it's a people goal. The numbers just support the vision and the mission that God has called us to. But I believe that God is still moving. I believe that God is still working. I believe that God is still making a way in our hearts, in our faith, and in our generosity. And He's still the God who makes the impossible possible. So today I want to invite you to do 3 simple things, but 3 costly things. And the first is I want to ask you to not just say, oh, this is someone else's problem. I want you to really start praying about the community, about the country we're living in. And I want to ask you to start praying this prayer, the most simple prayer, but a costly prayer. A prayer that changed my life forever. And this is it. Lord, break my heart for what breaks yours. Break my heart for what breaks yours. Jesus said, I'll leave the 99 for the one. And can we ask God to move our hearts the way He moved Nehemiah's heart? For our community, for our friends, for our family. But the second thing I want to ask you is to make space. This is not a building project. This is a vision that God has given us to make space in our hearts, first of all, for people. That means that we make space to receive people with grace. No matter where they are on the journey. It means that we make space around our tables. It means that we make space to invite people in. That we make space to serve well. It is a whole life where we say, God, make space in my life for those who do not know you yet. And the third thing is I want to ask you to give to this project. And this is not about, same as with the wall, it's not about equal giving because God gives different financial resources to all of us. It's a gift from Him. And He's not asking us to all give the same. He's asking us for equal sacrifice. So all of us are in, all of us building in front of our own house. So this is not about pressure. This is about participation. Saying, what has God called me to? I believe God is calling people home. Your friends, your family, your neighbors, and your co-workers. So let's rise up like the people of Nehemiah's day. Let's carry the burden together. Let's build our sections of the wall. Let's believe God for the impossible. And let's make space for the stories that God is about to write.